First of all, a major way in which we challenge the conventions of a real Hollywood film is the way in which the protagonists are arguably countertypes and not your common film heroes. This is one characteristic in which we challenge in terms of our film opening in compared to others. This is one similarity between us and one of our inspirations, Attack the Block, in which a group of teenagers, or rough teenagers, obviously not your typical heroes, try to fight the invading aliens and save the world, or rather their estate. The genre of our film is a hybrid of spoof, action, crime/heist, and therefore another way in which we used or challenged a typical convention of the media products is by combining genres that are arguably not ordinarily meant to go together. However, whilst I feel that we were not able to necessarily convey this through the opening, as a movie would develop, the spoof and satirical aspect would become more apparent as we realise that they are in fact teenagers, they do make mistakes. On the other hand, one way in which we develop on a typical convention of the action genre is a swift editing style, lots of short takes and transitions that provide the scene with a good sense of pace. Also, I feel that the use of on-foot tracking movement was a useful addition and can be seen in crime films such as Point Break, especially its heist scene. Typical conventions of a modern action film include chases as action, and we can see this in films such as The Dark Knight and Skyfall opening. The Dark Knight opening was a heist, and this is one of our inspirations as well, and therefore we tried to replicate this action into our film, albeit at a low budget.
Our protagonists are diverse and arguably countertypes, as they're not your typical heroes. The team is comprised of a black male, Asian female, and Asian male leads. This stands out and brings out unusual sense of diversity that you do not commonly find in Hollywood films, especially considering that your stereotypical protagonist is white male. An example of a similar film is Attack the Block, which follows suit as protagonist of a mix of rough teenagers trying to save the world. The teenagers in our film are relatable as they are going through exam time much like other teenagers. In addition to this, the idea that they are not typical protagonists helps the film seem more grounded because the protagonists appear to be more realistic. The motive of our group is a way in which the audience can identify with our heroes. As a result, the film represents the modern teenager through three characters. We have a geek, for example, in M, who represents the fact that they are essentially a techie generation.
For our film, I think an institution that we are most likely to partner with is Film 4. This is because of the films they make, often low budget, sometimes grounded, British films such as Attack the Block, Four Lions, and In-Betweeners. Film 4 are a production company owned by Channel 4, and in 2012 the company changed from Channel 4 Films to Film 4 to coincide with the launch of the channel with the same name. According to the website, this is what they are about. In 2011, Film 4 launched its groundbreaking new role in exploring innovation in filmmaking with the appointment of Anna Higgs as a commissioning executive with special responsibility for innovative talent development, production and audience engagement, with a focus on commissioning film projects that have the potential to explore the spaces and relationships between traditional media, digital platforms and the real world. And the most important part of the quote is that the idea that they want to focus on bringing films that they wanted to produce, grounding films, which is essentially what our film would be about. It wouldn't be a big Hollywood blockbuster, but rather comparable to Attack the Block. Their typical audience, especially of the films listed, is teenage young adults. This is similar to our target audience of young adult teenagers, and this is another reason as to why I feel like it would be perfect. We're also thinking about doing co-production with Studio Canal, as they worked on Film 4 on productions such as Attack the Block. Studio Canal productions also include massive blockbusters such as the Hunger Games franchise films that have a predominantly teenage audience. Therefore, based on the audience of some of their films, they would be appropriate as well. Our target audience for our film would be teenagers, young adults. The age range would be around 12 to 17, and this is because the protagonists of our film are teenagers themselves, aged 16 to 17, and would immediately be more relatable than the older characters that you commonly find in crime action genres, like in Ocean's 11. Our target audience would be teenagers because we have noticed a trend in popular franchises that aim their films at an audience of teenagers. For example, the Hunger Games and the Divergent franchises. In addition to this, these successful franchises have one thing in common. They have teenage characters as leads. Therefore, our film has A placed on the growing market, and given the original concept, it's likely to attract already fans of these films. Our institutions also affect this as Studio Canal produced the Hunger Game films and so have already an established teenage audience. They know what attracts this audience, and to meet this target audience, we have also used teenage leads to carry the film and have also an original concept that could interest. The concept of spy, crime, heist, spoof, genre being combined puts together some of the bigger genres together. From our questionnaire, in which we tried to find out what our target audience was and what favourite type of movie genre, we found out that out of action, comedy and thriller, horror and romance, the most popular choice was action, with 5 people saying so. Therefore, we tried to implement some action scenes into our opening, and I think we did so successfully.
In terms of the opening, I feel that we were able to reach out to the target audience through the use of teenage protagonists, a fast pace, and a good choice in non-didactic soundtrack. This ensured that our opening was interesting and required your attention. From the preliminary research questionnaire, we found out that out of the 10 people we asked, 8 preferred a fast-paced opening and as opposed to a slow one. I believe that this was really well implemented into our film, and this was evident through the use of editing, in particular the quick cuts and transitions, i.e. wipe, that were used. In addition to this, I know that through personal experience that in this day and age, teenagers are not as interested in the narrative but rather the on-screen action. This is evident in the Transformers franchise, in which the films have collectively grossed over $3.761 billion at the box office, but these films are critically panned. Therefore, once the results came from the questionnaire and we saw that one typical convention that the audience preferred was action, we knew it was vital to focus on this as opposed to the narrative. I personally feel that the characters did not feel as if they had been ripped out from a comic book, but rather seemed to be a genuine representation of the stereotypical modern students, which helps both keep them relatable, and I'm sure there are people who feel the same way as them regarding stealing exam papers, of course. One key aspect in which I also feel that was successfully targeted our audience was the use of production companies and distributors. In terms of our film, Film 4 and Studio Canal are the likely production company/distributor duo that we would use because they are films that often have a similar target audience. For example, films such as Attack the Block and The Inbetweeners.
We used the Canon 60D SLR camera. This allowed us to capture high quality images and capture HD resolution that we wanted in order to attempt a professional look. The touchscreen allowed us to capture shots that were difficult to see on the LCD. This includes the shot of Agent E walking. We used the 18 to 55mm lens, which is the standard on the camera. This lens allowed us to capture the landscape shot and all of the film, as there were no zoom-in shots which required another lens. We also used the tripod to capture stability throughout our film. This was useful for our establishing shot, as we could use the stick as a guide to track the building. We used Final Cut Pro to edit our film. The software allows us to transfer videos so they can be edited and exported. No one in the group had much experience using the software. However, the application was user-friendly and many YouTube videos helped us to learn new skills. The program allowed us to view different effects and transition upon applying them to our video. We added our royalty-free soundtrack and reduced the pitch and the levels.
The preliminary tasks involved myself and my group in creating a video clip which feature all 3 elements of continuity, match on action, and 180-degree raw. From the experience, we learned that we needed to work on continuity. Therefore, in our real product, my group and I made sure we didn't make the same mistake. The purpose of continuity editing is to smooth over the inherent discontinuity of the editing process, and in our preliminary task, we failed to show it throughout, as for example when shown Yishin sat down, transitioning to his hands down in the next shot. In the real one, we managed to get this sorted out, as I think it's due to us keeping in mind that it's something we needed to improve. Overall, the final product was a really big improvement.